Living with my stepson has always been an exercise in balance and understanding. Over the years, we've built a relationship based on mutual respect and a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. He's a thoughtful young man, studying physical therapy, which has only added layers of trust between us because of his caring nature and professional approach to everything he does. Lately, my days at work have been increasingly demanding. Juggling deadlines and managing my team leaves me with a constant ache across my shoulders and a stiffness in my back that seems to worsen with each passing week. It's the kind of persistent pain that creeps into your consciousness, refusing to be ignored. My stepson has become aware of my discomfort, often suggesting stretches and sometimes offering massages to help alleviate the pain. His knowledge of muscle groups and his ever-improving technique have been a blessing. It's comforting to have someone so close who can offer relief with such care. Our sessions are usually in the living room, a neutral space where I can lie down on a yoga mat while he applies just the right amount of pressure to soothe the tightness away. These moments are about more than just physical care. They're a reaffirmation of our familial bond. Each time he helps ease my pain, it feels like a silent acknowledgement of the trust and appreciation we hold for each other. But trust, as fundamental as it is, can sometimes lead us into complex emotions and situations we don't anticipate. As much as we believe we understand the boundaries that define our relationships, life has a way of testing them when we least expect it. Today was one of those days where nothing seemed to go right at work. From the moment I stepped into the office, it was one issue after another. By mid-afternoon, my back was throbbing relentlessly, each spasm a sharp reminder of the long hours I'd been putting in. It was not just the physical pain. It was the mental weight of it, dragging me down. When I finally got home, the house was quiet, the stillness a stark contrast to the chaos of my day. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and headed straight to the kitchen for a glass of water, hoping to wash away some of the day's bitterness. That's when I heard the familiar sound of a video game coming from the living room. My stepson was probably immersed in another world on the screen, a place I envied at the moment for its escape. I leaned against the door frame, watching him for a few minutes, noticing how focused he was. It reminded me of his dedication to everything he did, including his studies in physical therapy. A sudden thought crossed my mind, a potential relief from the discomfort that seemed to have become a part of me. "Hey, could you spare a few minutes?" I called out to him. He paused his game immediately, a habit he had developed whenever I needed his attention, and turned to me with a curious look. "Sure, what's up?" he responded, his tone always ready to help. "I've had a rough day and my back is killing me," I explained, rubbing the small of my back for emphasis. "Could you maybe give me a quick massage? I remember you mentioning you learned some new techniques at school." His face lit up with the opportunity to demonstrate what he had learned. "Of course, I'd love to help. Let's set you up in the living room, where there's more space," he suggested enthusiastically. We moved to the living room, where I laid down on the soft carpet, trying to find a comfortable position. He fetched the yoga mat from the corner of the room and spread it out for me, his movements gentle and considerate. Then he washed his hands, warming them before placing them on my back, his touch professional yet filled with a warmth that spoke of his care and concern. "Let me know if the pressure is okay," he said as he began, his hands expertly finding the tense spots that ached the most. The relief was immediate. His fingers worked magic on the knots, the pain ebbing away with each stroke. It was a moment of pure gratitude, feeling the tension dissolve under the careful ministrations of someone I trusted so deeply. In that instant, all the stress of the day seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound appreciation for the young man he had become and the bond we shared. This was more than just a physical relief. It was a reminder of the familial love that we had nurtured over the years. As I settled onto the yoga mat, the firmness of the floor beneath slightly cushioned by the mat's padding, a sense of relief began to seep through me, anticipation of the coming ease filling my thoughts. The day's accumulated stress, the tight deadlines, the endless meetings, the constant pressure, seemed to hover just at the edge of my consciousness, waiting to be dissolved. He started at my shoulders, his hands firm yet gentle, the warmth from his palms radiating through the thin fabric of my top. The movements were methodical, professional, mirroring the techniques he had been taught. His fingers deftly maneuvered around the contours of my muscles, pressing down into the knots with just enough pressure to work them out without causing pain. "Is this pressure all right?" he asked periodically, and I would nod or give a soft hum of approval. The familiarity of this routine brought a comforting rhythm to the room. I could feel the knots loosening under his skilled touch, the sharp edges of my pain blurring and softening as he worked. It was almost meditative, the steady motion of his hands coupled with the ambient sounds of the house, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing by outside, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by the breeze. With each minute that passed, I could feel myself sinking deeper into a state of relaxation. It was remarkable how much trust and comfort mattered in moments like these. His presence, so steady and sure, made me feel cared for in ways that went beyond just familial duty or academic exercise. There was an art to his method, a silent communication through touch that spoke of his attentiveness and empathy. As he moved down to work on the lower muscles of my back, his hands slid with more assurance, accustomed to the paths they followed. The initial touch was always a light glide, a mapping gesture that charted the terrain he was about to more thoroughly explore. This part of the massage often brought the most relief, targeting the deep-seated core of my day's physical woes. The room felt warmer, the air thick with the latent energy of expelled stress and the soothing continuity of his movements. With every press and release, a small part of the day's tension dissipated, replaced by a growing peace that ebbed gently through my body. It was a transformation witnessed in silence but deeply felt, a testament to the healing potential of human touch and quiet kindness. The soothing rhythm of the massage changed subtly at first, a shift almost imperceptible, his hands lingering a little too long on areas that didn't ache. The firm, clinical pressure gradually eased into a gentler, more exploratory touch. It was different, a stark contrast to the professional approach he had maintained until now. Confusion began to cloud the serenity that had enveloped me. My muscles tensed involuntarily, a physical response to the unexpected change. "Could you move a bit back up to my shoulders?" I suggested, trying to steer his hands away from where they had begun to wander too close to the lower reaches of my back. There was a pause, a moment where the only sound was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Then, instead of heeding my request, his touch drifted even lower, crossing a line that had never been in question before. I sat up abruptly, pulling the edges of my shirt down reflexively, a barrier against the sudden vulnerability I felt. "What are you doing?" My voice, sharp and louder than intended, broke the quiet of the room with its urgency. There was a stiffness in my movements now, a protective posture that contrasted sharply with the relaxation from just moments before. He withdrew his hands quickly, as if suddenly aware of their misplaced path. I thought you might be okay with it," he stammered, confusion and something else, a dawning realization of the mistake, crossing his face. "That was not okay," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the churn of emotions inside me. "You know that's not what I asked for." The sense of betrayal added a cold weight to my words. This was not the respect and care I had come to know from him. It was something else, something that had no place in our relationship or in any professional setting. He stood there, silent for a moment, struggling to articulate a response. The air between us felt charged now, heavy with the unspoken acknowledgement of his overstep. "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he finally said, his voice low, contrite. But the apology, while necessary, didn't immediately ease the tension. The breach of trust was palpable, a tangible shift in our dynamic that couldn't be brushed aside or easily forgiven. I needed space, time to process how the lines had blurred so unexpectedly. "I think it's best if we end this session now," I stated, not just to put physical distance between us, but to give myself the emotional space to understand how I felt about what had just occurred. As he nodded, quietly gathering his things, The familiarity and ease that had once defined our interactions seemed like a distant memory. I remained seated, grappling with a mix of disappointment and confusion, the warmth of the room replaced by a chill of discomfort that no amount of physical warmth could dispel. I stood up, wrapping myself in a blanket that lay draped over the couch, needing its comfort and protection. "We need to talk about what just happened," I said, turning to face him squarely. My voice was steady, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and the need to assert boundaries that should have never been questioned. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes unable to meet mine. I'm sorry. I didn't think," he began, his voice faltering. "I thought you might be okay with it since we were, I don't know, I just read the signals wrong, I guess." "Signals?" My disbelief was palpable. There were no signals. Asking for a massage because I'm in pain doesn't imply consent for anything more. The clarity of my own words cut through the confusion, reinforcing the inappropriateness of his assumptions. I know," he replied quickly, his words tumbling out in a rush. "It was stupid, and I'm really sorry. I thought we were close, that maybe you—" "We are close," I interrupted, my heart heavy with the weight of his misunderstanding. "But being close doesn't mean what you thought it means. It doesn't give you, or anyone, the right to assume consent." The room felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. "I'm really sorry, I truly am. I messed up. I promise it won't happen again." But the promise, while necessary, wasn't enough to mend the crack that had formed in our trust. "I need you to understand why this is a big deal," I continued, my voice a blend of sternness and fatigue. "You violated my trust, and that's not something we can just move past with a simple apology. We need to set some very clear boundaries." He swallowed hard, nodding again. "Yes, of course. Whatever you need. I really didn't mean to. I'm sorry." The words hung between us, a flimsy bridge over a chasm of unease. "I appreciate your apology," I said, my tone softening slightly. "But I think we both need some time to think about how we move forward from here." He agreed, quietly excusing himself to go to his room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a lingering sense of disillusionment. The betrayal was not just in his actions, but in the realization that our relationship had veered so far from what I had believed it to be. Sitting back down, I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It was going to take more than time to rebuild the trust that had been so carelessly fractured. How could we find our way back to a place of mutual respect and understanding? The question loomed large, echoing in the empty spaces of the room. That night, lying in the darkness of my bedroom, the day's events replayed over and over in my mind. The quiet of the house, usually so comforting, now seemed to amplify every racing thought. It was hard to reconcile the stepson I knew and cared for with the young man who had crossed those boundaries. The breach of trust felt like a palpable presence in the room, a reminder of how quickly things could change. The disappointment was deep, not just in his actions, but in my own response. I found myself questioning everything. Had I been too trusting, too complacent in our relationship? The sense of betrayal was jarring, and it left me feeling more vulnerable than I had in a long time. It wasn't just a matter of forgiveness, it was about safety, respect, and the integrity of our relationship. I thought about our past, the years of building a family together, the trust that had seemed so solid. How could we rebuild that? Was it even possible? The answers weren't clear, and the ambiguity of the situation weighed heavily on me. I considered the need for boundaries, for clear lines that perhaps should have been drawn more explicitly from the start. Maybe this was an opportunity, a painful one, certainly, to set those boundaries firmly now. By the time morning light began to seep through the curtains, I had made a decision. We couldn't move forward without addressing this openly and seriously. This would mean having a real conversation about consent, about professional and personal boundaries, and about the respect we owe each other as family members. I knew this conversation would be difficult, but it was essential if we were to salvage our relationship and our peace of mind. I also realized that we might need help beyond just talking to each other. Seeking advice from a professional, someone who could provide guidance and perhaps mediation, seemed like a prudent step. It would not only help us navigate this challenge, but also reinforce the seriousness of the situation to him. It was about more than just us. It was about ensuring that he understood the broader implications of his actions for future relationships, whether personal or professional. As I rose from the bed, the decision felt like a weight off my shoulders. It wasn't resolved, not by a long shot, but there was a path forward, a plan. Today would be about starting that difficult conversation, about taking those first steps towards understanding and, hopefully, healing. The future of our relationship depended on it, and I was ready to face whatever that future held, armed with clarity and a resolve to protect and preserve the respect and love that should define our family. The morning air was crisp, a reminder of the changing seasons as I made my way downstairs. The familiar sounds of the house felt different today, each step echoing with the weight of the conversation ahead. I found my stepson in the kitchen, his back to me as he made coffee. The mundane act seemed out of place given the gravity of our situation. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my stomach. He turned, his expression apprehensive, clearly aware of the discussion that lay ahead. He nodded, gesturing to the kitchen table where we sat down across from each other, a small expanse of wood between us that felt like miles. "I want to apologize again for yesterday," he started, his voice earnest, his eyes meeting mine with a vulnerability that reminded me of the boy he once was. "I realize now how inappropriate I was. It was wrong, and I'm truly sorry for making you feel uncomfortable and for breaking your trust." I listened, the sincerity in his voice apparent, but I knew words were just the start. "Thank you for your apology," I replied, pausing to gather my thoughts. "But we need to talk about boundaries and respect. What happened can never happen again, and it's important for both of us to be clear on that." He nodded, his face solemn. "I understand. I really do. And I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I want to learn from this and ensure it never happens again. We need to set some specific guidelines about physical interactions. From now on, if any kind of physical support is needed, it should be in a professional setting or with a professional present," I continued, laying out the boundaries clearly to avoid any future misunderstandings. He agreed without hesitation, the readiness in his response giving me a sliver of hope that we could move past this. "I think it would also be good for us to see a counselor together, to talk about this with someone who can help us navigate through it," I suggested, thinking about how a neutral third party could provide us with the tools to rebuild our relationship. "That sounds like a good idea," he acknowledged, his tone one of acceptance. "I'll look into finding someone we can talk to." As we stood up from the table, the air felt lighter, the first words of apology and understanding bridging the gap that had formed between us. It was the beginning of a long journey of rebuilding trust, but the commitment to making it right was clear in his demeanor. As he went back to his routine, I watched for a moment, a cautious optimism taking root. The steps we had laid out were just the beginning, and while the road to recovery might be long and fraught with challenges, the willingness to confront the issue head-on gave me hope. This incident had changed the dynamics of our relationship, but with respect and clear boundaries, we were taking the first steps toward not just coexisting, but truly understanding and respecting each other once more.